Hello, everybody. This is Susan Kokinda with your midweek update. Today is December 18th, and it's Wednesday. I'm sure a lot of you remember the iconic meme put out by Elon Musk the day he walked into Twitter headquarters after his takeover in 2022. It showed him carrying in a sink with the caption, "Let that sink in." And many of you probably saw his recent remake of that, of him carrying the same sink into the Oval Office. I think for many of us, it's still sinking in. If you've been following Promethean Action, you know that our updates, our posts, and our live discussions since the election have been stressing the historic nature of the transformation that we're in the middle of. And if you haven't, I encourage you to subscribe to and support Promethean Action. Now, I'm going to start by playing something which is perhaps a little surprising. I'm going to play a clip from Van Jones, an Obama ally and a CNN host.
How the hell did Donald Trump figure out the mainstream media is the fringe and the fringe is now the mainstream? How the hell did Donald Trump figure out? I mean, Joe Rogan is obvious, right? Like, we knew the guy had a big audience. It's not like we were like stunned, but like, how the hell was he, the 78-year-old guy who doesn't even have a computer and still like writes handwritten notes? How did he become the guy who cracked the code on, to your point, running a cultural, I don't even want to say campaign, running
It's a it was a movement.
cultural
Look,
movement, heading a cultural movement versus a
everybody,
campaign.
every one of your people knows Elon. Listen,
Yeah.
yeah. So,
Yep.
so I mean, everybody keeps. I mean, the problem is you have a framework in your mind that how can Donald Trump? How can Donald Trump? How can Donald Trump? Guys, can we cut it out? Donald Trump is not an idiot. Donald Trump. Let me just be very clear. Donald Trump is smarter than me, you, and
Yep.
all critics. You know why we know? Because he has the White House, the Senate, the House, the
Totally agree.
support, the popular vote. He has a massive media ecosystem bigger than the mainstream built around him and for him, and a religious fervor and a political movement around him. And his best buddy is the richest person in the history of the world, and the most relevant Kennedy is with him. This dude is a phenomenon. He is the most powerful human on earth and in our lifetime, and we're still saying, well, how was this guy? We look like idiots to ordinary
You're
people. He
you're
is.
totally right.
Okay, so let that sink in. That is a rather dramatic recognition of what is going on politically. What Jones is reflecting, whether he understands it in these terms or not, is that with Trump's election, with the team he is putting together, and with the active participation of a mobilized American citizenry, we are at the point of closing a chapter in human history. This is a chapter which has been dominated by the axioms of the post-war Anglo-American financial empire. One of the most dramatic examples of those policies in the last week was the assassination of Russian General Kirillov in Moscow by the Ukrainian Secret Service. The only purpose of that, as with the firing of U.S. missiles into Russian territory, is to keep the geopolitical fires burning and to try and lock President Trump into an intractable negotiating quagmire. As we've reported, Trump's now public and repeated attacks on the missile launches and possible back-channel discussions with the Russians may hold this escalation at bay long enough for us to indeed close this chapter, a chapter which has been dominated by perpetual war and by the doctrine of mutual and assured destruction. This also underscores the importance of our mobilization to confirm all of Trump's nominees, with a current emphasis on those like Tulsi Gabbard and Hegseth, who will be at the spear point of taking on the war apparatus. If you haven't signed our petition, Confirm Them All, you can find it in the comments and on our website. And keep calling your senators. With Musk's promise to fund primary candidates who will run against any Republican who bucks President Trump's policies or nominees, you have a greater effect than at any time in recent history. But the further challenge we have is to write a new chapter, to create something afresh, as our founding fathers did. who, after they defeated the British and created our first government, had to go back to the drawing board and replace the Articles of Confederation with our extraordinary Constitution, which through all the perils has delivered us to this moment. So today I'm going to focus on two aspects. Where are we in this transition? And I would say sort of mid-turning the page. And what is the driver of that transformation? And how is that going to guide us in writing the new chapter? Van Jones captured it in his own way in the clip above, but Donald Trump did as well in his Man of the Year interview with Time magazine. He said, "I think the Democrats didn't get it. They just kept going back to the same old nonsense. And we hit something that was very special. We hit the nerve of the country." Now, at that point in the interview, Trump was largely talking about the illegal immigration crisis. But at the very end, he came back to this idea when he was asked about the assassination attempt in Butler. And he said, "I think a lot of people changed in that moment. I think a lot of people became much more religious in that moment. And I think it's not just religious in an organized religion kind of way. It's spiritual. And it begins to capture the quality of the transformation which is taking place. The reawakening of the sense that we are part of a universe which is guided by higher principles, and that those principles are shaped by the good, as Plato describes it in his Republic. But this also naturally carries with it a real dose of optimism and joy, which is palpable in most of the country. If you don't break into a grin when you watch yet another TikTok of people doing the YMCA Trump dance, then you're missing something very important. So, what are some of the aspects of this change? Everywhere you look, you see the Democratic Party, especially the Obama-era Democratic Party, cracking apart because, as Trump said, the Democrats don't get it. Here are some examples of Democrats who it might be dawning on them that they didn't get it and they need to think in a different way. First, you have Pennsylvania Democratic Senator John Fetterman agreeing to meet with Trump's DOD nominee Hegseth and endorsing Trump's UN pick, Republican Congresswoman Elsie Stefanik. Then you have the head of the Longshoremen's Union, Dennis Daggett, who met with Trump and put out a statement that said, quote, "But I witnessed something extraordinary firsthand. This man truly wants to fight for America and its working class. In over 25 years of working in Washington, I have never seen a Republican take up the mantle for working class people," unquote. Third, look at Black Democratic New York Mayor Eric Adams saying that he's going to work with the Trump administration to help deport criminal illegal aliens, and he's willing to bypass his city's sanctuary laws and his city council and use executive orders to do so. And this is coming amidst rumors that he might change parties. Fourth, you have third-term Democratic Detroit Mayor Mike Duggan announcing that he is running for governor of Michigan in 2026, but not as a Democrat, as an independent. Duggan clearly understands that the current Democratic leadership in the state of Michigan is toxic. It's dominated by the progressive wing of the Democratic Party, led by the current governor, Gretchen Whitmer, who is being groomed as a white version of some Obama-Kamala Harris hybrid to run for president in 2028. Her heir apparent for governor in Michigan, Jocelyn Benson, is quite hysterical about the Duggan announcement. Now, this just touches on the political surface of what is going on. As I said at the outset, we're closing the chapter of the post-war era, which has been shaped by the imposition of British imperial politics, of geopolitics, and monetarism. The hallmark of geopolitics is treating countries and their populations as dispensable chess pieces to be maneuvered and sacrificed in order for those elites to maintain their control. Look at the fate of the Ukrainian people. sacrificed to a war that never should have started. Look at the stark danger to the entire world's population as the puppet Biden and Zelensky governments escalate their provocations against Russia, as we've already mentioned. Turn to the Mideast. Talk about chess pieces being sacrificed. Saddam Hussein, Muammar Gaddafi, to just name a few. And don't forget the 1995 assassination of Israeli Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin, following a massive peace rally in support of the Oslo Peace Accords, which had been negotiated with the PLO. Rabin was assassinated by a right-wing Zionist who was incubated in the same British-created movement that now fuels Benjamin Netanyahu's government. When it suits the purposes of the geopolitical chess masters, everyone is expendable. The empire does not like nation-states with a national purpose. And now, with the looming disintegration of Syria and potentially Lebanon, we are looking at the British Empire's dream of a Mideast-dominated, never-ending conflict between Islamicist forces, currently led by Turkey, and a Zionist-run Israel. Trump is going to have his hands full, but the basic architecture of the Abraham Accords, which seeks to shift the dynamic away from entrenched and fomented religious and ethnic squabbles, and instead strengthens the role of actual nations seeking common grounds of peace and economic development, is the only pathway forward. The fact that Trump is de facto functioning as a pre-president already is having a palpable effect. Even though we're still in the middle of that page turn, those leaders who insist on sticking with the policies of the old chapter are fading from the scene. This week, the German government fell and is calling for snap elections for only the fourth time in the post-war era. The French government was subjected to its first no-confidence vote since 1962, and French President Macron had to replace his prime minister for the fourth time in 1 year. And who can't help but smile at the resignation of the uber-globalist Chrystia Freeland, Canada's finance minister. Politico put it this way: President-elect Trump's tariff wars have claimed their first casualty, Canada's Chrystia Freeland. And Trump continues to troll Canada, calling it the 51st state. And he said of Freeland, her behavior was totally toxic and not at all conducive to making deals which are good for the very unhappy citizens of Canada. Meanwhile, those who are ready for the new chapter are already on board with Trump, and the list of foreign leaders who will attend the inauguration will probably grow. A colleague of mine who has traveled in China and maintains dialogue with people there reported that while some, maybe many, in China remain in an anti-Trump mindset, as many in the United States remain in an anti-China mindset, some have a different view. A well-placed contact of his was thrilled about Trump's inauguration invitation to Xi Jinping and said, the U.S. and China working together can solve many of the world's problems. And believe me, this was not in the old chapter of the geopolitical playbook. Turn to the other pillar of British imperial policies, the financialization of everything in a world where central banks and what Trump once called the globalist financier elite run everything. Something is happening in the newly dawning world of American economic nationalism. Trump's revival of the American system of economics, although he actually hasn't called it that since 2017, is acting like a magnet. In his wide-ranging press conference on Monday, Trump announced a $100 billion investment into the United States by the head of Japan's SoftBank. And Trump prodded him to double that investment to $200 billion if it's successful. Then yesterday came the announcement from Virginia Governor Glenn Youngkin that Commonwealth Fusion Systems, the largest private fusion company, will make a multi-billion-dollar investment in building the world's first grid-scale commercial fusion power plant. Youngkin announced that the plant is projected to provide power to the grid by the 2030s. Commonwealth Fusion Systems is a private company spun off from MIT's fusion program and has received significant investments from Bill Gates, Google, and others. Talk about a new chapter in human history. We should have had fusion power in the last century, but the anti-growth, anti-human outlook of the imperial elite throttled it and choked off its funding with budgets that ensured fusion never. It is ironic that the energy demands of AI are propelling the Gateses and the Googles and the Amazons of the world to invest in fusion or to reopen nuclear plants like 3 Mile Island. There is something deeper going on. This new chapter, being written by Donald Trump, Elon Musk, and a younger generation which is hungry for real progress, is emerging. Through this new chapter, we will dramatically increase our dominion over nature with modern transportation, modern energy, new cities, and not just here on Earth, but on the moon and Mars. That uniquely human quality of creativity, of mastering new frontiers, of unpacking more of how our universe works, is what has been reawakened in the course of this battle to restore an actual American presidency with truly American policies. Promethean Action has been conducting a class series addressing this fundamental principle of economics. Last week, Bob Ingram took up the question of national banking from this unique standpoint, and you can find a link to that class on our website. So stay tuned for Barbara's Saturday Wrap. This has been your Midweek Update. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for your continued support. Please take a moment and subscribe to our free newsletter at prometheanaction.com.